The first thing they heard was the sound, a low, trembling hum that rolled across the barren plains like a storm warning. Men and women stationed at Outpost 9 lifted their heads in unison, their hands tightening around rifles, tools, or the steel railing of the walls. That sound was not thunder. It was not wind. It was the rhythm of engines, alien and massive, descending from the sky. For weeks, Command had whispered about a coming assault. Scouts had vanished beyond the ridges. Drones had returned with scorched hulls and no data. At night, some swore they saw shadows in the clouds, vast shapes moving against the stars. But nothing had been confirmed. Nothing until now. The hum grew louder, turning the air heavy, pressing against lungs like a storm about to burst. From the western horizon, black specks appeared against the pale light of the dying sun. They multiplied, growing larger, until entire formations of enemy craft filled the sky. "Contact!" the watch officer shouted, voice sharp and steady despite the fear crawling up everyone's spine. "All units to battle stations." "This is not a drill," sirens wailed. The outpost came alive. Outpost 9 was not much to look at. A fortress of steel and stone set into the jagged cliffs, meant to guard the pass into the northern territories. It was humanity's shield, the thin wall between billions of civilians and the endless armies of the Xeyth. Supplies were scarce, reinforcements months away, but those who served here did not expect rescue. They had sworn another kind of oath: humans do not run. Captain Elias Kalin stood at the central command platform, watching the alien fleet advance through the dust-choked air. His jaw was set like carved stone, his gray uniform scorched from older battles. He had seen war in every form, from orbital firestorms to trenches dug in frozen mud. But this was different. He turned to the assembled officers. "You know what is coming. You know what this outpost means. If they break us here, there is nothing left to stop them before the northern colonies. There will be no retreat. There will be no surrender." The officers saluted. Some were veterans with faces like iron. Others were barely older than recruits, hands trembling against their rifles. But in their eyes was the same fire, the same resolve that bound them together. Out on the plains, the first alien bombardments began. Bolts of green energy lit the horizon, striking the cliffs with thunderous force. Rocks shattered, fire blossomed, and the earth itself seemed to groan under the assault. Outpost 9 shook but did not crumble. Its walls were built for this. Its people were born for this. The hum of engines deepened, and alien troop carriers descended like vultures from the sky. Massive shapes with jagged wings opened their bellies, releasing swarms of war beasts that screamed as they fell. Their armored bodies slammed into the ground, claws tearing the dirt as they charged forward. Behind them, lines of Xeyth soldiers marched, their black armor gleaming with the reflection of flames. "Open fire," Captain Kalin ordered. The walls erupted with light and fury. Cannons roared, rifles spat fire, rockets streaked through the sky. The first wave of alien beasts was torn apart, their bodies exploding in sprays of green ichor. Soldiers cheered from the ramparts, but the celebration was short. More waves followed. Dozens became hundreds, hundreds became thousands, until the plains writhed with an ocean of enemies. Kalin's voice cut through the chaos. "Remember who you are. You are the shield of humanity. Hold this wall or there will be no one left to hold anything." The men and women of Outpost 9 roared in reply, voices shaking the heavens themselves. The battle began in full. Flames painted the horizon. Smoke billowed upward, and the air filled with screams, gunfire, and the sickening clash of steel against claw. The Xeyth advanced relentlessly, their monstrous forms climbing over their own dead, tearing at the walls with jaws and talons. Soldiers on the battlements fired until their rifles overheated, then drew blades and fought hand to hand. Blood slicked the stones. The scent of burning flesh mixed with ozone, yet no one broke. Private Darius Vale, youngest of the garrison, fought with the fury of desperation. He had grown up hearing stories of human defeats, of colonies burned and families taken, but he had also grown up hearing the phrase that defined them all: humans do not run. Each time his hands shook, each time his heart pounded with fear, he whispered it under his breath like a prayer. Humans do not run. He drove his bayonet into the throat of a charging beast, its green blood spraying across his armor. He did not retreat. On the eastern wall, Sergeant Lyra Miles rallied her squad as a breach opened. Xeyth soldiers poured through the gap, black armor gleaming, energy blades hissing. Lyra met them head-on, her rifle discarded, her short blade slicing through alien throats. She was outnumbered 10 to 1, her squad already dwindling. But she fought with the strength of 20. When a blade pierced her side, she ripped it free and drove it back into her attacker. She laughed through the blood. "You think I will run? I was born here." And above them all, Captain Kalen moved like a storm. His command staff begged him to stay in the bunker, to direct the defense from safety, but he would not. Sword in one hand, pistol in the other, he fought on the walls beside his soldiers. Every strike was precise, every bullet fatal. To see him was to remember why Outpost 9 had held for so long. To see him was to remember what it meant to be human. The Xeyth screamed. Their war beasts clawed higher. Their ships rained fire from above. Outpost 9 burned, but its people stood. Bloodied, battered, outnumbered beyond hope, they still fought, because humans do not run. And as the night fell over the burning plains, the battle had only just begun. Night came, but darkness did not bring relief. The flames of war turned the sky into a shifting tapestry of smoke and fire, painting the stars in crimson and green. Outpost 9 had become a fortress ablaze, its walls cracked, its towers shattered, yet still standing against the tide. Captain Elias Kalen moved across the battlements, his voice carrying like steel across the chaos. "Hold the lines. Reinforce the breaches. They think we will break. Show them we do not." His soldiers answered with their rifles. Each shot cracked like defiance against inevitability. Each explosion was a heartbeat of resistance. The Xeyth swarmed the plains, endless, unrelenting, but the humans answered with fire of their own. Private Darius Vale staggered as another explosion rattled the wall beneath him. He had not slept in 2 days. His ears rang with the constant roar of war, his vision blurred from smoke and exhaustion. Yet he kept firing, reloading, firing again. His shoulder ached from recoil, his hands bled from burns, but he whispered the words that kept him moving. "Humans do not run." A shadow fell across him. One of the Xeyth war beasts scaled the wall, its claws biting into the steel, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Darius raised his rifle, but it jammed with a hollow click. The beast lunged. Then, in a blur of steel, Sergeant Lyra Miles cut it down. Her blade carved across its throat, spraying ichor as the creature fell backward into the swarm below. She grabbed Darius by the collar and yanked him up. "No dying yet, Vale. We are not done." He nodded, teeth gritted, forcing his trembling hands to reload. Together, they turned their rifles on the advancing horde, bullets carving fire through the night. Elsewhere, Captain Kalen fought like a man possessed. He had discarded his pistol when it ran dry, drawing instead a plasma-forged sword taken from a fallen enemy. It glowed blue in his hand, every swing searing through alien armor. He moved with purpose, his strikes clean and efficient, cutting down one after another, rallying his soldiers with every motion. To see him fight was to remember why Outpost 9 had never fallen, but even the strongest walls tremble when the storm does not cease. The western gate cracked under the assault of siege engines. Massive constructs of alien metal slammed their claws into the defenses, tearing stone and steel like paper. Artillery fire answered, blasting holes into the advancing machines, but for each that fell, 2 more advanced. "Kalen," an officer shouted, running through smoke. "The west wall will not hold another hour. We must withdraw to the inner defenses." The captain turned, face blackened with soot, eyes burning with resolve. "Withdraw? And abandon the wall? No, if the wall falls, the outpost dies. We hold it." "But sir," Kalen cut him off, his voice sharp as the sword in his hand. "I said hold it. Humans do not run." The words rippled across the line. Exhausted soldiers straightened their backs. Wounded fighters gritted their teeth. Those 3 words were heavier than armor, stronger than any wall. The Xeyth howled as they surged again. War beasts leapt onto the walls, claws raking against steel. Soldiers fought with bayonets and blades, grappling in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Blood painted the battlements. Screams mingled with gunfire. Darius Vale found himself pinned against the wall by a snarling beast, its jaws snapping inches from his face. His rifle clattered to the ground. He pushed against its throat, his strength failing. The creature's hot breath burned against his skin, its teeth closing in. Then he remembered. Humans do not run. With a roar, he drew the combat knife from his belt and plunged it into the beast's eye. It shrieked, thrashing before tumbling backward into the swarm. Darius collapsed, chest heaving, blood streaking his face, but he was alive. Sergeant Lyra appeared again, hauling him to his feet. "See? You are learning." The battle raged into the deep night. Hours passed, each minute stretching into eternity. Ammunition dwindled. Medics ran out of supplies. Soldiers fought with scavenged weapons, alien blades torn from fallen foes, rocks, even their fists. Still they fought. By dawn the battlefield was a graveyard. The plains below the outpost were littered with bodies, alien and human alike. Smoke curled from broken engines. Fires smoldered in the wreckage of fallen ships. The Xeyth had been pushed back for the moment, their forces regrouping beyond the ridge. On the walls, silence fell. Soldiers leaned against cracked battlements, eyes hollow, faces streaked with ash and blood. Some wept quietly. Others stared at the horizon with grim determination. Outpost 9 still stood, but the cost had been steep. Captain Kalen stood at the center of it all, his sword buried in the ground beside him. He looked at the survivors, half their number gone, many more wounded, and spoke with the calm authority of a man who had seen too many dawns like this. "You fought as only humans can fight," he said. "They came in endless waves and you did not break. They will come again and we will not break then either. Because we are not running. This is our wall. This is our outpost. This is humanity's line and it will not fall." The soldiers answered with weary cheers, voices hoarse but filled with fire. Even those who could barely stand lifted their weapons in salute. For beyond the smoke, the alien fleet still hovered. The battle was not finished. The siege of Outpost 9 had only begun. The sun clawed its way above the horizon, weak and pale behind a curtain of smoke. Dawn should have brought hope, but for the defenders of Outpost 9 it was only another reminder that the siege had not lifted. The Xeyth fleet lingered above the ridges, their ships dark shapes against the morning sky. The ground below was littered with corpses and twisted wreckage, the stench of charred flesh and alien ichor poisoning the air. Inside the walls, survivors dragged bodies to makeshift pyres. Medics worked tirelessly, binding wounds with strips of burned cloth, injecting stimulants into exhausted soldiers just to keep them standing. Engineers hammered at shattered cannons, coaxing sparks into dead generators. The outpost looked less like a fortress and more like a dying beast, bleeding and broken, but still refusing to collapse. Captain Elias Kalen had not slept. His uniform was torn, his face smeared with soot, but his eyes burned with clarity. He stood on the central command platform, reviewing reports, listening to officers argue over dwindling ammunition and broken defenses. "We cannot hold another full assault," one officer said, slamming a datapad onto the table. "The west wall is fractured. The towers are rubble. We have less than 30% of our original munitions. If they come again with the same force, we will be overrun." A silence hung heavy in the command chamber. Everyone knew the numbers. Everyone had seen the corpses of their friends carried past. Kalen's voice cut through like steel. "Then we make every bullet count. We fight until there is nothing left in our hands but blood, and then we fight with that." The officer paled. "Sir, you cannot be serious." "I am very serious," Kalen snapped. "If they breach this outpost, there will be no one left to stop them before the northern colonies. Millions will die. We do not run. We do not surrender. We hold here or humanity falls." The room fell silent. Even those who had doubted could not argue with the truth in his words. Outpost 9 was not just a fortress. It was the last shield for half a world. On the ramparts, Private Darius Vale sat with his back to the wall, rifle across his lap. His hands shook from exhaustion. His ears still rang from the endless bombardment. He watched as smoke drifted across the plains, obscuring the enemy's movements. He wanted to believe Kalen's words, wanted to believe they could keep holding, but fear gnawed at him. Scared, Sergeant Lyra Miles dropped beside him, her side bandaged from the night before, her face pale but her eyes sharp. Darius tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "If I said no, I would be lying." "Good," she said, checking the edge of her blade. "Fear keeps you alive, but you do not let it own you. You use it." Darius glanced at her, surprised. "And you? Are you not afraid?" Lyra smirked, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Terrified. But humans do not run. That is enough for me." Before Darius could answer, the alarms blared again. Soldiers scrambled to positions. Engineers abandoned repairs. Medics dragged stretchers into cover. The ground shook as new engines roared across the sky. Kalen appeared on the wall, his voice booming. "Positions! They are coming again!" From the smoke beyond the ridge, the Xeyth returned. This time it was not just beasts and infantry. Massive walkers emerged, towering machines of alien steel, their legs sinking deep into the blood-soaked earth. Energy cannons mounted on their backs glowed with lethal power, ready to tear the outpost apart. "Target those walkers," Kalen roared. Cannons fired from the ramparts, shells streaking across the plains. The first walker staggered under the impact, one leg crumpling before collapsing in a roar of fire. Soldiers cheered, but then two more appeared to take its place. The Xeyth infantry charged again, black armor glinting, war beasts snarling at their sides. The ground shook under their advance. Energy bolts filled the air, slamming into the walls, sending showers of sparks and stone. Darius lifted his rifle, teeth clenched. He fired into the advancing horde, each shot tearing into alien flesh. Around him, soldiers shouted, screamed, fell, and rose again. The walkers opened fire. Beams of green energy slammed into the battlements, tearing apart towers, vaporizing squads in an instant. The western wall groaned, cracks spreading like spiderwebs. "Keep firing," Lyra shouted, cutting down a beast that vaulted onto the wall. "They will not take this outpost." Darius fought at her side, bayonet flashing, rifle cracking. He no longer noticed the burns on his hands or the blood on his face. He only heard Kaylin's voice echoing in his mind. "Humans do not run, but even courage has limits." A blast tore through the western gate, ripping steel apart. Xeyth soldiers poured into the breach, their energy blades slicing through defenders. Kaylin himself raced to the gap, sword blazing, cutting down alien after alien with furious precision. "Hold the breach," he bellowed. "No one gets through." The battle turned savage. Blades clashed, bodies fell, screams echoed. Darius and Lyra fought in the thick of it, surrounded by smoke and blood. Darius stabbed, fired, punched, anything to keep the enemy back. Lyra fought like a whirlwind, her blade painting arcs of fire through alien armor, but the tide pressed harder. More soldiers fell. The breach widened, the outpost trembled. Then Kaylin appeared at the front, his uniform shredded, his face bloodied, but his eyes burning brighter than ever. He lifted his sword high, its plasma edge blazing like a star. "Do you hear me?" He roared above the chaos. "This is Outpost 9. This is the wall of humanity, and humans do not run." The soldiers answered with a roar of their own, voices hoarse but unbroken. They surged forward, pushing the enemy back step by step. Blades clashed, rifles cracked, and for one desperate moment, the breach held. The walkers advanced closer, their cannons glowing, preparing another devastating volley. Kaylin knew they could not withstand another barrage. He turned to the artillery crews. "Bring them down!" "All guns on those walkers." Shells roared, missiles streaked. The first walker staggered, then collapsed in a ball of flame. The second followed, its leg torn apart by rockets. The third fired one last time, obliterating a tower, before human firepower shredded it into pieces. The soldiers cheered, exhausted but alive. The Xeyth lines faltered, retreating back into the smoke. For the moment, the outpost still stood, but Kaylin knew the truth. That had only been another test. The real assault was yet to come. The battlefield fell silent, save for the crackle of fires and the groans of the wounded. Smoke drifted in heavy curtains across the plains, obscuring the retreating shapes of the Xeyth. For the first time in hours, no gunfire echoed, no alien roars shook the earth. The defenders of Outpost 9 stood among the wreckage, bloodied and battered, staring in disbelief that they had survived another wave. But relief was a dangerous illusion. Captain Kaylin descended from the ramparts, his armor scorched, his sword still dripping with alien ichor. He surveyed the carnage, his heart heavy with the cost. Hundreds more lay dead. The walls were cracked, the towers gutted, the gates half destroyed. Even victory here had the taste of ashes. "Get the wounded to the infirmary," Kaylin ordered, his voice low but commanding. "Rebuild the barricades. Scavenge every weapon from the dead. We do not know how long until the next assault." Medics hurried past, dragging stretchers. Engineers swarmed the walls with tools and welding torches, patching what they could. Soldiers looted the bodies of fallen Xeyth, stripping alien rifles and grenades for anything usable. The entire outpost moved like an exhausted machine, each part broken but still working because it had no choice. In the infirmary, the air was thick with blood and antiseptic. Rows of wounded groaned beneath dim lights. Private Darius Vale sat on a cot, while a medic stitched a deep cut across his shoulder. His hands trembled, not from pain, but from the memory of how close the enemy had come. "You fought well," Sergeant Lyra said, leaning against the wall nearby, her own arm wrapped in fresh bandages. Darius shook his head. "I was terrified the whole time," Lyra gave a grim smile. "Good. Terror means you are still alive. The dead feel nothing." Darius looked at her, the question heavy on his tongue. "Do you really think we can win this?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "I do not know. But I know this. If Outpost 9 falls, then every home I ever knew, every person I ever loved, dies next. That is all the reason I need to fight until my last breath." Her words sank into him hard as stone. Darius realized then that courage was not about the absence of fear. It was about standing in spite of it, holding the line when everything inside screamed to run. Back in the command chamber, Kalen studied the holographic map of the region. Red marks spread across the screen, showing enemy positions tightening around the outpost like a noose. Reports confirmed what he already suspected. The last attack had been a probe, a test of their defenses. The true assault was still building. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Arvin, stepped forward. "Captain, the men are exhausted. We have lost over half our original numbers. Supplies are nearly gone. If they launch another full offensive, I do not see how we hold." Kalen did not look away from the map. "Then we hold with blood. We hold with fire. We hold with everything we have left. Because there is nowhere else to run." Arvin hesitated. "Sir, with respect, if we fall here, there is no one left to warn the colonies. Perhaps some of us should try to break through the siege. Carry word. Ensure our deaths mean something." Kalen turned, his eyes burning. "Our deaths already mean something. Every moment we stand delays them. Every alien corpse we leave rotting outside these walls buys another second for our people. If anyone leaves this outpost, it will be when the last wall falls and the last gun falls silent. Until then, we fight." The room fell quiet. Even Arvin, though his expression was grim, gave a slow nod. There was no questioning the captain's resolve. Night fell again, cloaking the outpost in shadow. Fires burned in the distance where wrecked walkers still smoldered. The soldiers of Outpost 9 stood at their posts, weapons ready, eyes scanning the dark horizon. Exhaustion hung on them like chains, but beneath it all simmered a grim defiance. Darius sat on the rampart, staring into the black smoke beyond. He wondered how many of the others felt the same knot of dread twisting in his gut. The silence was worse than the bombardment. Every flicker in the darkness, every shifting shadow could be the start of another wave. Then the ground trembled. At first it was faint, like distant thunder. Then stronger. The very stones of the outpost rattled, dust raining from cracks in the walls. Soldiers stiffened, eyes wide. The alarm shrieked across the outpost. Kalen strode to the wall, his sword in hand, eyes narrowed into the smoke. Slowly, shapes emerged. Not infantry, not beasts. Something larger. Colossal siege engines rolled into view, towering constructs of alien design. Their carapaces gleamed with black metal, their fronts bristling with massive cannons. The ground quaked with every movement, leaving craters in the soil. Behind them marched endless rows of Xeyth infantry, a tide of black armor stretching into the night. The soldiers of Outpost 9 stared in horror. They had barely survived walkers and shock troops. Now the enemy brought weapons designed to erase entire cities. "Steady," Kalen's voice cut across the panic. "This is the hour we were born for. We are the wall between them and our people. Do not falter!" The cannons of the siege engines began to glow, energy building with a low, vibrating hum that rattled bones. Kalen raised his sword. "Fire!" Every gun in the outpost roared. Cannons belched fire. Rifles cracked. Rockets streaked through the night. The walls shook under the recoil. Explosions lit the plains in flashes of orange and green. One of the siege engines staggered, smoke pouring from its carapace as shells struck home. But the others answered, unleashing beams of searing energy. The west wall erupted in fire, stone and steel vaporized in an instant. Dozens of defenders vanished in the blast. "Reinforce the west wall," Kalen shouted, sprinting through the chaos. Soldiers scrambled to fill the breach, hurling grenades, firing blindly into the smoke. Alien infantry surged forward behind the blasts, their war cries echoing. Darius found himself shoulder to shoulder with Lyra again, their rifles spitting fire into the endless tide. A Xeyth warrior leapt onto the wall, blade flashing, and Lyra cut him down with a single strike. Darius fired point blank into another, the recoil jarring his shoulder. The outpost became a maelstrom of fire and blood. Siege engines pounded the walls. Infantry poured through breaches. Defenders fought in desperate knots, holding ground 1 inch at a time. Kalen's voice rose above it all, a rallying cry that cut through fear. "Do not give them an inch. Humanity stands here." And though the night burned, though the walls cracked and bodies fell by the hundreds, the soldiers of Outpost 9 did not run. The battlefield became a furnace. Fire, smoke, and alien shrieks filled the air as the siege engines continued their relentless assault. Each blast tore fresh holes in the crumbling walls, sending showers of stone and bodies tumbling into the ruins below. The defenders fought like cornered animals, their faces blackened by soot, their hands blistered from weapons that had overheated hours ago. Captain Kalen moved among them, sword blazing with plasma, cutting down any alien that dared breach the ramparts. His presence was a lifeline, his voice a command that steadied trembling hands. Wherever he stood, Men and women found the strength to stand a moment longer, but even he could not be everywhere at once. On the eastern wall, Private Darius Vale ducked as a blast obliterated the parapet a few meters away. Rubble and fire rained down. His ears rang, his vision blurred, but he forced himself to rise. Around him, defenders scrambled to set up a line of fire, dragging heavy rifles into position atop broken stone. Sergeant Lyra Miles barked orders, her face streaked with blood, her blade already wet with alien ichor. "Keep firing. Do not let them gain a foothold," she shouted, slashing down another Xeyth that clambered up the shattered stones. Darius fired until his rifle clicked dry. He dropped it, grabbed another from the hands of a fallen comrade, and kept shooting. His body screamed for rest, but adrenaline drowned exhaustion. The line had to hold. The siege engines lumbered closer, their cannon blasts ripping apart the courtyard. Kalen sprinted to the central command tower, leaping over corpses, his voice sharp. "Target the engines. All rockets, all heavy firepower. Bring them down now!" A volley of missiles streaked from the outpost. The first engine shuddered as warheads slammed into its armor, explosions tearing plates from its frame. A second volley followed, ripping open its carapace. With a groan like a dying beast, the colossal machine collapsed, flames consuming its core. Cheers rose from the defenders, but they died as the other engines advanced, undeterred. Their cannons glowed brighter, preparing another barrage. Kalen clenched his teeth. He could feel the balance tipping, the weight of the siege pressing down. Outpost 9 had weathered storms before, but this was a hurricane meant to drown them all. "Captain," Lieutenant Arvin shouted, running to his side. "We cannot hold them like this. The engines will tear us apart before dawn." Kalen's eyes burned with defiance. "Then we strike back." "Prepare the storm lances," Arvin froze. "Sir, those weapons are unstable. If they overload, they will overload," Kalen interrupted. "That is why we use them. Better to burn our own hands than let this outpost fall. Ready them." The order spread. From hidden bunkers, massive artillery pieces rose, experimental weapons built in desperation during the early months of the war. They glowed with crackling energy, unstable cores humming with dangerous power. The first storm lance fired. A beam of searing light cut across the plains, striking a siege engine mid-step. Its armor split like paper, the machine erupting in a blinding explosion. The ground shook with the force of it. A second lance fired, tearing through another engine, reducing it to molten slag. The soldiers roared, hope rekindled by the impossible sight of the monsters falling. But the weapons screamed with strain. Sparks cascaded down their barrels, conduits bursting as engineers struggled to keep them stable. "Push them to their limits," Kalen bellowed. "We need them now, or we will never need them again." The final siege engine lumbered closer, its cannons glowing with annihilation. The third storm lance fired, energy tearing through the night sky. The beam struck true, slicing the machine in half. Fire consumed it, its wreckage toppling into the alien ranks. The defenders roared, their voices shaking the heavens. Against all odds, the engines were destroyed. For the first time, the Xeyth advance faltered, their lines hesitating. Kalen seized the moment. "Counterattack! Drive them back!" The gates opened, and human soldiers surged forth, blades flashing, rifles spitting fire. They poured through the smoke and fire, screaming defiance. The Xeyth reeled under the sudden assault, their disciplined lines broken by the ferocity of desperation. Darius ran among them, bayonet fixed, every nerve alight. He stabbed, fired, struck with raw fury. Beside him, Lyra carved a path through alien warriors, her blade singing as it split armor. The battlefield outside the walls became chaos. Smoke obscured the stars. Fire lit the plains in violent orange. Humans and Xeyth clashed in a storm of steel and energy. For every defender that fell, another rose, driven not by orders, but by the unshakable truth. Humans did not run. Kalen fought at the front, his sword carving arcs of burning light. He cut down alien after alien, his voice rising in a roar that carried across the carnage. "Outpost 9 stands! Humanity stands!" The defenders pressed the Xeyth back, step by bloody step, until the alien tide finally broke. The survivors retreated into the smoke, their roars fading into the distance. The field was theirs. But victory was hollow. Hundreds more lay dead among the burning wreckage. The outpost was a ruin of shattered walls and scorched earth. The storm lances lay in smoking pieces, their cores spent, and every soldier knew in their heart that the Xeyth were not finished. Kalen stood among the ruins, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on the black horizon. He knew this had only been another test, another probe. The true storm was still coming. Behind him, Darius collapsed onto the stones, chest burning, arms numb. He looked at Lyra, who was leaning on her bloodied blade, her face pale but still fierce. Was that enough? He asked, voice hoarse. Lyra shook her head slowly. Not yet. They will come again. They always come again. Kalen turned, his voice steady despite the exhaustion dragging at his bones. Let them come. Outpost 9 still stands, and as long as we stand, humanity does not run. The soldiers answered with weary cheers, their voices hoarse but unbroken. The night swallowed them, but their fire burned brighter than ever. Dawn came, but it was a cruel light. The rising sun revealed the devastation of the battlefield more clearly than the flames of night had allowed. The plains before Outpost 9 were a graveyard. Blackened craters, shattered armor, broken alien bodies, and the fallen humans who had refused to retreat. Smoke hung heavy in the air, blotting the horizon, and the acrid scent of ash and blood seeped into every breath. Inside the walls, the survivors moved like ghosts. They staggered among the ruins of their own defenses, dragging beams back into place, welding steel plates across breaches, stacking sandbags where towers had once stood. The fortress looked less like a bastion and more like a scar, burned, fractured, and bleeding, but still holding. Captain Kalen stood at the eastern wall, surveying the carnage. His eyes traced the black horizon where the Xeyth had vanished. He knew this silence was a trap. It was not mercy, not retreat. It was the pause before the killing blow. Lieutenant Arvin approached, face gray with exhaustion. Reports from all sectors, Captain. We lost another 100 last night. Ammunition is at 30%, food is almost gone, and the generators are barely running. If they hit us again, I do not see how— Kalen cut him off with a sharp look. Do not say it. We do not speak of failure. Not here. Arvin lowered his voice. Sir, the men are breaking. They will fight as long as you stand, but they are tired. They need hope. Give them something, or this outpost will collapse before the enemy even returns. Kalen turned back to the horizon. His voice was iron. Hope is not a gift we wait for. It is what we make with our hands, our blades, our blood. I will give them something, Arvin. I will give them the truth. That humanity does not run. That we are the line. And that if we fall here, we fall standing. Arvin said nothing, but in his eyes flickered the faintest spark. A reminder that even despair could be bent to fire. In the infirmary, Darius lay on a stretcher, staring at the cracked ceiling. His body ached from bruises, burns, and cuts, but his mind would not rest. He kept hearing the thunder of cannons, the shrieks of aliens, the roar of Kalen's voice cutting through chaos. His hand still twitched as though gripping a rifle. Sergeant Lyra appeared at his side, her arm in a sling but her eyes sharp. She dropped a canteen onto his chest. Drink. You look like you are about to fall into the grave. He obeyed, water spilling down his chin. Why are we still alive? He asked softly. Lyra smirked, sitting on the cot beside him. Because we are too stubborn to die. Because Kalen refuses to let this place fall. And because humans— Do not run, Darius chuckled weakly. You sound like him? Good, she replied. Someone has to keep reminding you. The alarm wailed again, shattering the fragile quiet. Soldiers scrambled to positions. Medics froze mid-stitch, engineers dropped tools. The walls shook as engines thundered beyond the smoke. Kalen's voice roared across the outpost. Positions! They are coming! The ground trembled as the Xeyth emerged again, this time in endless waves. Infantry poured from the horizon, armored beasts snarling at their heels. Above them, dropships streaked through the sky, unleashing barrages of fire onto the walls. The storm had returned. Darius staggered to his feet, rifle in hand. Pain screamed through his muscles, but fear and defiance burned hotter. He ran to the wall where Lyra was already waiting, blade drawn. The sky lit with fire as the enemy bombardment began. Explosions tore through barricades, hurling soldiers into the air. Shattered stone and burning metal rained down, but the defenders fired back with every weapon they had left. Rifles cracked, rockets streaked, mortars thundered. Kalen stood atop the central tower, sword raised high. They think we are broken, he roared. They think we are beaten. Show them what it means to fight humanity. Show them that we do not run. The defenders answered with a roar that shook the walls. The clash came like a tidal wave. Xeyth infantry hurled themselves against the outpost, clawing at the walls, blasting through cracks. Blades flashed, energy bolts scorched stone. Bodies fell into the blood-soaked mud. On the ramparts, Darius fired into the horde until his rifle overheated. He dropped it, drew his sidearm, and kept shooting. When that emptied, he grabbed a fallen comrade's weapon and fought on. Beside him, Lyra cut down alien after alien. her movements sharp and relentless despite her wounds. The walls shook violently as massive beasts slammed against them. One broke through, a hulking creature of armored hide and burning eyes. It tore defenders apart with clawed hands, until Kalen leapt from the tower, sword blazing. He struck once, twice, 3 times, carving through hide and bone until the beast collapsed in a heap of burning ichor. "Hold the line," he thundered, standing atop the corpse. "Not one step back." The soldiers rallied, their fear drowned by his fury. They fought like demons, hurling grenades into the advancing ranks, charging with bayonets, screaming defiance as they pushed back the alien tide. But the Xeyth were endless. For every wave cut down, another surged forward. The walls crumbled further, the gates cracked, the towers burned. Darius found himself at the western breach, fighting hand-to-hand against alien warriors. His blade clashed with theirs, sparks flying, sweat and blood stinging his eyes. He felt himself faltering until Lyra appeared at his side, her blade flashing in a deadly arc. "Stay with me," she shouted. He nodded, forcing his body to obey, forcing his fear into rage. Together they pushed the aliens back a step, then another. Kalen fought his way to the breach, his sword dripping fire. He looked at the ruin of his outpost, at the endless tide still pressing forward, and knew this was only the beginning. But his voice was steady, his resolve unbroken. "They will not take this place," he growled. "They will not break us. Not while I still breathe. Outpost 9 stands. Humanity stands, and humans do not run." The words spread like fire through the defenders, each syllable a spark in their blood. And though the sky burned, though the walls fell, though the dead lay thick upon the stones, the defenders fought on with the fury of a species that refused to kneel. The siege was not over, but neither were they. The night bled into fire and chaos. Outpost 9 was no longer a fortress. It was a battlefield within walls. The ramparts crumbled, gates hung shattered, and the once proud towers were nothing but blackened stumps. Yet, amid the destruction, the defenders fought with a savagery that defied reason. Captain Kalen moved through the carnage like a storm incarnate, his sword carved blazing arcs, each swing cutting down alien warriors with inhuman precision. His voice roared above the din, every command a spark that drove broken men and women forward. But he felt it, the walls of resolve cracking, not just the stone. His soldiers were tired, their faces hollow, their bodies pushed beyond endurance. Even defiance has limits. On the western breach, Darius Vale stumbled over rubble, his rifle slipping from blood-slick hands. He grabbed another weapon without thinking, firing into the tide of Xeyth that poured through the gap. His body screamed for rest, but the words Kalen had drilled into them all echoed in his skull. "Humans do not run." Beside him, Sergeant Lyra was a whirlwind, her blade flashing, her free hand steadying soldiers who faltered. Blood seeped through the bandages on her arm, but she did not stop. She refused to stop. Every step backward was paid for with alien corpses. The Xeyth pressed harder, their lines unbroken, their warriors fueled by some cold, unyielding hunger. Their command ships loomed in the sky above, casting shadows across the battlefield, their cannons silent. For now, they were waiting, watching, testing. Kalen saw it clearly. This was not the final blow. The Xeyth were probing, grinding the defenders down until only bones remained. The true assault still lingered beyond the smoke. "Hold!" Kalen's voice thundered across the outpost. "Hold the line!" And somehow, impossibly, they did. Hours passed in a blur of blood and fire. By the time the alien tide pulled back once more, dawn was clawing its way into the sky. The survivors collapsed where they stood, weapons falling from trembling hands. The courtyard was a sea of corpses, human and alien alike, the ground slick with blood and ash. Darius slumped against the ruined wall, chest heaving, eyes unfocused. Lyra dropped beside him, her blade coated in ichor, her face pale. For a long moment neither spoke. Words felt hollow in the shadow of such carnage. Finally Darius whispered, "We cannot keep this up." Lyra's eyes flicked to him, sharp despite exhaustion. "We have no choice." Kalen appeared then, blood streaking his face, his armor cracked and blackened. He looked at them, at all of them, like a father watching his children. He knew they were at the edge of collapse. He also knew they would follow him into the abyss if he let them. "We will endure," he said, his voice steady despite the ruin around him. "Because if we do not, the colonies fall, the world falls, humanity falls, and I will not let that happen. Not while I still breathe." The words carried, reaching ears that could barely hear, souls that could barely rise. Yet they rose, because they had to. Later in the command chamber, Kalen studied the holomap. Red markers spread across the horizon, alien forces tightening their grip. Outpost 9 was surrounded. There would be no reinforcements, no rescue. They were alone. Lieutenant Arvin stood beside him, face drawn. "Captain, the men will fight as long as you command it, but we are running on fumes. Ammunition is nearly gone. Food will not last another day. Even our wounded refuse to stay down, but their bodies are failing. We can," Kalen said, cutting him off. His gaze was locked on the enemy positions, his jaw tight. "We must. And when the last wall falls, when the last bullet is fired, we will fight with our bare hands. Because humans do not run," Arvin swallowed hard, then nodded. He wanted to argue, but the words would not come. Kalen's conviction was a wall stronger than any stone. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Darius sat among the wounded. The room reeked of blood and antiseptic. Men and women groaned on stretchers, their bodies mangled but their eyes burning with the same fire. A medic worked frantically, stitching wounds with shaking hands, whispering prayers under her breath. Lyra appeared again, leaning on her blade like a cane. She looked at Darius, at the bandages wrapped around his arms, and smirked faintly. "Still alive," he gave a bitter laugh. "Barely." "That is enough," she replied, voice flat but firm. Their conversation broke as the alarm blared again. Soldiers froze, medics dropped tools, and the ground shook beneath them. Darius felt his chest tighten. Already? He thought they would have at least a few hours to breathe. But the Xeyth did not wait. They never waited. Kalen's voice boomed across the outpost. "To the walls! They are coming again!" Darius forced himself to his feet, every nerve screaming. Lyra was already moving, her limp barely slowing her. Together they joined the surge of defenders heading to the ramparts, the horizon lit with alien fire. Dropships streaked low, unleashing barrages onto the walls. The ground trembled as armored beasts charged once more, their roars shaking the sky. Infantry followed in endless waves, their black armor gleaming with death. Kalen raised his sword, its plasma edge blazing like a beacon. "This is the storm we were born for," he roared. "Stand firm. Outpost 9 does not fall. Humanity does not run." The defenders answered with a roar of their own, voices hoarse but unbroken. The clash came again. Fire, steel, blood. Darius fought like a man possessed, every motion fueled not by strength but by sheer defiance. He stabbed, fired, punched, anything to keep the line from breaking. Lyra was beside him, her blade singing, her movements fierce despite her wounds. Kalen carved a path through the enemy, his voice rising above the chaos. He felt the walls shaking, the ground quaking, but his resolve was iron. The Xeyth could break stone, they could break bodies, but they would not break the will of humanity. Not here, not tonight. The siege reached its crescendo. Outpost 9 burned like a beacon against the dark horizon, its flames rising to the heavens as if to defy the alien night itself. The walls were shattered beyond repair, the gates no longer existed, and every corridor was a battlefield of ash and bone. Yet still the humans fought. Captain Kalen stood atop the last intact bastion, his armor broken, his body drenched in blood. Some his own, most not. The sword in his hand was no longer a weapon. It was an extension of his soul, each strike echoing with the fury of a people who refused to be erased. The Xeyth came in endless waves. Their black-armored warriors surged through the breaches, climbing over the corpses of their own fallen to press the attack. Their towering beasts roared as they crashed into human lines, their claws tearing through steel, their jaws snapping bone. Above, alien ships hovered like vultures, their engines thrumming as if in anticipation of the kill. But the defenders of Outpost 9 stood their ground. Darius Vale, his uniform torn to rags, fought with fists when his rifle jammed. He smashed his knuckles into alien visors, grabbed weapons from the fallen, and kept moving. Every breath was agony, but he refused to let it be his last. His mind repeated Kalen's mantra with every strike: humans do not run. Beside him, Sergeant Lyra's movements slowed, her wounds catching up with her. Yet her blade still sang through the air, every swing purposeful, every motion filled with defiance. She bled, stumbled, and rose again, her eyes blazing brighter than the fires that consumed the outpost. The infirmary had become another battlefield. Medics who once stitched wounds now wielded pistols, firing through the smoke as they shielded their patients. Even the wounded themselves crawled into the fight, dragging broken bodies into the fray. No corner of Outpost 9 was spared, and no soul stood idle. Kalen's voice roared above the chaos carried by willpower alone. "Hold the line! For every stone they take, bury them beneath it. For every drop of blood we spill, make them drown in theirs. Humanity does not run." The defenders answered, their voices hoarse, their throats raw. It was not a battle cry anymore. It was a vow, a promise to themselves and to the universe. The Xeyth pressed harder. Their commanders had grown impatient. The sky split with thunder as their warships unleashed full bombardments. Beams of searing energy rained down, obliterating towers and trenches alike. The ground shook, the walls collapsed, and fire swallowed everything it touched. Kalen staggered beneath the shockwaves, his vision blurred. But through the smoke, he saw the truth. The enemy wanted to erase them, to break their will so thoroughly that no human dared resist again, not while he lived. With a roar, Kalen leapt into the heart of the enemy vanguard, his blade a comet of light. Alien warriors fell by the dozen, their black ichor spraying as he carved through them. Darius and Lyra saw him and surged forward, rallying those still alive to follow. The defenders became a storm of flesh and fire, tearing into the Xeyth with a ferocity born not of survival, but of defiance. The courtyard became a slaughterhouse. Alien and human corpses piled atop one another until the ground itself was unrecognizable. Fire rained from above, and still they fought. Every heartbeat, every breath, every scream was proof that humanity had not yielded. At last the Xeyth line faltered. For the first time, their disciplined advance wavered, their warriors hesitating beneath the sheer madness of human resistance. Their commanders barked orders, but the hesitation spread like a crack in glass. The defenders of Outpost 9, broken and bloodied, surged through the gap with howls that chilled even the alien hearts. Kalen's blade pierced the chest of the alien war leader, a towering beast clad in obsidian armor. With a final defiant shout, he wrenched the blade free and cut the monster down, its body crashing into the rubble. The sight sent a ripple through the alien ranks. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the Xeyth pulled back. Not in retreat, not fully, but enough. Enough to acknowledge that Outpost 9, against all logic, against all odds, still stood. Kalen collapsed to one knee, his chest heaving, his blood soaking into the earth. Darius and Lyra staggered to his side, their bodies barely holding together. Around them the survivors stood like shadows, too few to count, too battered to move. But their eyes, those eyes still burned. The sky was black with alien ships. The war was far from over. Outpost 9 would likely fall before another dawn. But in that moment, in that silence carved from blood and fire, humanity had won something greater than survival. They had shown the universe what it meant to be human. Not strength, not numbers, not technology, but will. The unbreakable, undeniable will to stand when all reason says to fall. Kalen forced himself to rise, his voice ragged but unyielding. "We are not finished," he growled. "Not while one of us still breathes. They will come again, but let them, because humanity does not run." The defenders of Outpost 9 raised their weapons, broken as they were, and the cry rose one final time, echoing through the ashes. Humans do not run. And the universe would never forget it.